Huge EDC knives are not only fun, but surprisingly practical to carry. So today we are talking about 5 big EDC knives you should carry. Giant knives can be a ton of fun, so we are going to kick it off with what is probably the funnest knife on our list, and that is the Kizer Sheepdog XL. It's got a 154 cm blade, G10 handle, and an overall length of 9.25 inches. The blade length comes in right at 4 inches, and the handle length is 5.25 inches. Now the Sheepdog XL comes in just over 9 ounces, so it's not a crazy heavy knife, but the thing that is really awesome about this huge knife is obviously the cleaver blade. This blade width is 1.75 inches, so like 1 3/4 inch wide blade. This is probably one of the widest bladed production knives ever made. Now, I've got a medium-sized hand, and as you can see with the Sheepdog XL, there is plenty of width and length left with my entire hand on it. And here is the Kizer Sheepdog XL next to the Benchmade bug out for size comparison. The Sheepdog XL is in Kizer's Vanguard series, which is their more affordable series. So you can get this thing for right around $100, which is a crazy good deal given how much knife you have and honestly just how cool it is. It's commonly said that you can do anything with a big knife that you can do with a small knife, but not vice versa. And that is completely true in my experience with carrying big knives and small knives and all sorts of knives. Now the Sheepdog XL obviously falls a little bit more to the fun side of that practical to fun scale. I have heard of people using this as a full-blown kitchen knife because of how big and useful that cleaver is, but it does have a liner lock, and it's a pretty thick liner lock, but if you have a big knife like this, you want to kind of be able to beat it up. And that brings us to our next knife, which is part of a group of knives that are probably the king of hard use big knives. Coldsteel is the king of huge EDC knives. Now, obviously they have things like the Espada XL, which is a literal folding sword that goes in your pocket and actually fits in your pocket. But when it comes to knives in their lineup that I would actually carry, and I have actually carried, for sure, the 4MAX Scout is at the top of my list. The 4MAX Scout has an Oz 10A blade and a Gryvex handle. It has an overall length of 10 inches with a blade length of 4 inches and a handle length of 6 inches. There are a couple things that set Coldsteel and the 4MAX Scout apart from other big knives. One of those is the Demco designed triad lock. The triad lock is an extremely strong locking mechanism that you know just isn't going to fail regardless of what you put your knife through. The other thing that's really special about Coldsteel knives and the 4MAX Scout is I think they've got like a tesseract or something over there at Coldsteel, because so many of their knives are so big you think they would not fit in your pocket comfortably or sometimes even fit in your pocket at all, and yet it seems like every time they do, and the 4MAX Scout is no exception. Fits in the pocket wonderfully. The 4MAX Scout is overall the longest knife that we have on our list and also has the most handle real estate. If you just got like bear paws or you just want like a super big burly knife, 4MAX Scout is a great option. It's also the heaviest knife in our list, coming in at 10.19 ounces. So this is well over a half a pound of chunky, tough steel. And for comparison, here's the 4MAX Scout next to the Benchmade bug out. Carrying the 4MAX Scout actually gave me a great reminder just a few years ago that not everybody is a knife person, and that when you're carrying a big knife like this, you do have to have a special consideration of when and how you pull it out. So I was at the grocery store and it was late at night, I was trying to get some food, and I was getting some canned stuff to make some chili or tacos or something like that. And the shelves were all pretty empty, but they were stocking. So I had the 4MAX Scout in my hand, and what I needed was on the floor in a pallet. So I was like, oh, I can just cut the top of the pallet out, take out what I need and leave. So I pulled out the knife, popped it open, cut the pallet open, grabbed a couple cans of whatever I needed, some beans or something like that. And there were 2 gals in the aisle, and they looked at me like I was insane. And so I just was like, oh yeah, I should probably be careful how and when I pull out my big knives. Now, when we talk about Coldsteel kind of being the king of big EDC folders, it only makes sense to also look at where a lot of that started with the grandfather of big EDC folders. The Buck 110 is called a lot of things. You know, your grandpa's knife, a type of traditional knife, a good outdoor knife, a good hunting knife, but I think it's overlooked a lot as a good big EDC knife. And especially when we consider when this thing was released and what other knives were on the market at the time, this was probably one of the biggest folding knives you could get for a long time. The 110 is just over 8.5 inches long overall with a 3 3/4 inch blade and a handle that's just under 5 inches. Here's how the Buck 110 fits in my hand. And for size comparison, here's the Buck 110 next to the Benchmade bug out. Now, the Buck 110 can come in a bunch of different configurations. The standard blade material for most Buck 110s is 420HC with that awesome Paul Bose heat treat. We were lucky enough to get in on the Magna Cut drop that they did, so this is actually a Magna Cut Buck 110, which is pretty special. There's all sorts of history and little things about the Buck 110 that are always really fun to know, but there's one that I think a lot of people don't know, and that is a lot of the 110s come with the ebony wood like you see here on this one. And that ebony wood actually comes from Taylor guitars. So every Buck 110 you buy that has a wood handle on it, that wood was at some point in process used in a guitar factory, which is kind of a cool little fact. The Buck 110 also comes with a really nice leather sheath that you can wear on your hip. Now I find that like on the day-to-day, I don't really like having tools on my hip, but I've seen a lot of guys carry the Buck 110 in their pocket, like Nathan over at Nick's Boots, who we recently saw. He's like 7 feet tall, has huge hands, and the Buck 110 is his EDC knife that he puts in pocket. You can carry it any which way. It's a great classic that gets overlooked, I think, a lot when we're talking about big knives, and you can get them for like 65 bucks is about the starting price. Now, the Buck 110 is just the classic kind of like traditional-esque big knife out there. So let's take a look at something that's a little bit newer, a little bit more high speed. This is the Knives Reaver, and it's definitely the opposite end of the spectrum of our Buck 110. It's got an S35 VN blade, it's got milled titanium handles with a titanium frame lock, and it is by far the fanciest knife on our big knife list. Looking at it, you may not think this is that big of a knife because it's a little deceiving with the thin handles and the thinner blade stock. But the reality of it is the blade on this is almost 4 inches long, which is how long the blade was on the 4MAX Scout. So the Reaver is definitely a big knife with an overall length of 8.84 inches. Again, a blade that's almost 4 inches long and a handle that's almost 5 inches long. Here's the Reaver next to the Benchmade bug out. And this is how the Knives Reaver fits in my hand. Now, I've had the Reaver for the least amount of time of all of the other knives on this list. I got it back in November, and I do find myself gravitating to it a lot. I think that the blade shape is really unique, how you get just a little bit of belly on that cleaver blade. And the handle isn't something that I would normally go for. I'm not a big titanium guy, but the way that they milled it and everything, it looks kind of spacey. It looks like something that might belong in the Star Wars universe or something like that without being obnoxious. So the Knives Reaver really is an awesome knife. And like I'd mentioned, it is the most expensive knife on our list. I think it comes in at right around, $250, $260. But again, full titanium construction, titanium pocket clip, premium blade. Which brings us to the sponsor of this video, We and Civivi Knives. As you guys know, they have supported the channel basically since the beginning of the channel, which is so awesome. And they allow us to make cool videos like this and have really cool knives like this. Because they are the sponsors, I am going to show you one other big knife that they make, and it's by my buddy Ben Banters. You guys know it is no secret that I love the Big Banter, and it is actually a big knife. Micarta handles and 20CV blade, and both of these knives are a great example of what We Knives and Civivi Knives does. They just don't miss when it comes to the quality of the knives they make. And I've said it before, not all their designs are for me, but I can't deny how smooth the action is. I can't deny how well placed the ergonomics are, and I can't deny the breadth and depth of knives that they make. So whether you're on a budget and you're looking for a knife in the $30 to $40 range, or whether you want to go with something kind of crazy and premium like the Reaver, they're going to have what you need. Thank you, We and Civivi, for sponsoring this video. There's no way that we could be talking about big EDC knives and only feature one Coldsteel. Our second Coldsteel on the list is the Coldsteel SR1 Lite. The SR1 Lite has an 8CR 13 MOV blade, a very grippy Gryvex handle, and of course, the triad lock. With an overall length of 9.37 inches, a blade length of 4 inches, and a handle length of 5.375 inches, the SR1 Lite is definitely a big EDC knife. Here's the SR1 Lite next to the Benchmade bug out, and here's how it fits in my hand. The reason that we chose the SR1 Lite as the second Coldsteel to feature is that, of course, it's big in handle, of course, it's big in length, it's got a pretty good size cutting area and blade and all of those things. Where the SR1 Lite really hits that big EDC category is in the blade stock. So the blade stock on the SR1 Lite is almost a 1/4 inch thick. So you could definitely say It's a thick boy.
He's thick!
Another really cool thing about the SR1 Lite is that it comes in 2 different blade shapes. We have the Tonto blade shape here, and the Tonto blade shape is kind of a heritage piece when it comes to cold steel. And I would actually say that if it wasn't for cold steel, and maybe a little bit for Spyderco, we really wouldn't have the Tonto blade shape in today's knife vernacular. So the SR1 Lite is a cool knife and important for a couple different reasons, but like I said, I just can't get over how thick that blade stock is and just how meaty and beefy and just kind of secure this knife is. Carrying a big EDC knife is very similar to carrying an EDC fixed blade knife. It gives you confidence in your tool regardless of whatever situation you might find yourself in. Now, we only featured 5. There are some awesome big EDC knives out there. Let us know what your favorites are. We'll catch you on the next one.